Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you find yourself pressing play. I'm your host, Desi Abeda, and you're tuned into the Can't Believe I Made It podcast, where every story is an odyssey and every individual a warrior of their own making. As we open up episode 159, I am beyond thrilled to welcome a man whose narrative defies the gravity of struggle, Dan McQueen. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into the story of a pivot so profound that it redefines the meaning of a turning point. Dan, a beacon of hope and testament to the enduring power of the human soul, has walked through valleys shadowed by 2 traumatic brain injuries, only to ascend peaks that few dare to dream of. And as we sit at the juncture of seasons, moving from the theme of pivoting in our lives to actually taking action, Dan's journey resonates as a call to all who listen. For this is not just a story of surviving, but of thriving. Not just of falling, but rising with the glory that outshines the darkness of his toughest days. We'll dive deep into what it truly means to pour love into the relationships that cradle us in our darkest hours, the mindset that champions are made of, and the actions that forge the path from mere existence to exuberant living. So wherever you might be, in the comfort of your own home, in the hustle of your commute, or in the quiet of a moment stolen from the day's demands, lend us your ears and open up your hearts. This, my friends, is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. Welcome to the incredible saga of Dan McQueen.
All right, what is good, high performers? Happy New Year, happy 2024. We are actually recording this in 2023, or the latter parts of 2023, but I am super excited to have our guest on for today, Mr. Dan McQueen. Welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast, my friend.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Dan, so you obviously just got back from Scottsdale. You and I just had a quick chat that you're 90 minutes from me. So next time you're in town, man, can we please connect? Just please.
I'd love to, man. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much for saying that.
So Dan, there's a couple key pieces that I think are important. You know, in season 8, to kind of give you some background, we really went into this theme of pivoting. You know, each and every one of us come to this moment of pivot in our hero's journey where it's time to make a pivot. And I think heading into season 9, what I was thinking about from a theme is taking the pivoting action into taking action and creating actionable steps for yourself. And so after reading through your story, I'm just excited to hear what has happened in your life and the type of hero that you have become, man. So, Dan, I think a good place to start here is tackling your story, dude, because you tell it in such a really profound way.
Well, thank you, Diaz. It's very kind to say, man. I can go through the story, no problem. So what makes me interesting is I've survived 2 traumatic brain injuries, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let me back it up and let you know how that began, because it kind of came out of nowhere, out of left field. This all happened in jolly old London, England in 2014. I was having these headaches that were getting persistently worse over a few weeks. I went to A&E. Now, A&E is accident and emergency in the UK, so like ER if you were in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran some tests and they go, you know what, this looks like vertigo, we're going to send you home. But I was on the tube the next day, picking up something from a friend in Notting Hill in London, and my vision slowly started to fade out. Like it started going in and in and in until it was black. I couldn't see anything. The curtain fell on me. When I arrived in Notting Hill tube station, so I got on the platform. I hadn't figured out what I was going to do yet, and my vision came back about 3 minutes later. But those were the most scary 3 minutes of my life because I don't know how to resolve this issue, and I knew something's definitely wrong here. This is not normal behavior for the eyes or the brain or whatever have you. This is chaos, man.
Yeah.
So I went back to A&E the next day. They ran the same test. They thought it was vertigo. Still sent me home. On the way out, Diaz, they told me I could always get my eyes checked with an optometrist, right? An optometrist, you say. So the following day, I found myself in Mr. Gattel's chair. He's midway through the exam, a routine exam, when he stops the exam and excuses himself from the room. He comes back a few minutes later with a sealed envelope, which he gives to me. He tells me you need to go directly to Moorfields Hospital, which I did. Well, Diaz, tell a lie. I stopped at home first to grab a Jack Reacher book by the child, a phone charger, and a bite to eat. Then I made my way to Moorfields Hospital. They ran the same test there, then escorted me up to Charing Cross Hospital. Turns out it was pretty bad. I had a dangerous buildup pressure in my pineal gland, caused from a non-cancerous cyst. Turns out I required emergency brain surgery tomorrow. It turns out, Diaz, my world would change overnight. So after a frantic back and forth with folks in Canada, my mom was in the air flying to London on June 21st, when I was on the operating table. Now something went horribly wrong. And I had a massive bleed in the brain, a brain hemorrhage. Mom lands and finds I'm in critical condition. I was in a coma for 4 weeks, but was in and out of consciousness for months after this. Things were dicey, touch and go. When all was said and done, I was learning how to walk, talk, and smile again, Diaz. So things kind of kicked off rather quickly for me here.
All right. I know you're going to tell more of this story, but Dan, I do have a couple enlightening questions here. So,
Please.
one, when you're getting this news, I think one of the things that a lot of our listeners come to me with, because I'm really big on pouring into the relationships that mean the most to you. And oftentimes I get questions like, hey, Des, like, can you talk to me about what it means to pour into a relationship and what it means to make sure that you are keeping your part, right? And I think the question that comes up, Dan, in my mind is like, as you're getting this news, who's a part of your support system during this time?
Yeah, so I texted my mom with the news, like I'm having surgery tomorrow. I go, I guess I'll have a new haircut tomorrow, Mom. I said, and I sent the last text message. Like, dude, I was terrified, but I'm like, I'm not going down like a punk. Like, let's have a little bit of cheek, a little charm. So I sent my text message to my mom, and she got that, and she goes, "You'll be even cuter when I come see you soon. You're in good hands there." And call my brother was like pretty chill about the whole thing. Like, yeah, I'm having brain surgery tomorrow, just so you know. Because yeah, man, you were super chill about the whole thing. Like, yeah, well, I didn't want to like show them a punk or something like this. This is my last memory on this earth. Could be. Let's not go out like a punk, but like let's have a bit of charm in the cheek. Like let's go out and face this. If this is what's happening, like I'm happy to go face the music now, but like I'm not going out like a punk, man. So like I wrote that message and I said that message instead. But yeah, family was very key for this, right?
Yeah. So I mean, as you're going through this, Dan, obviously you get yourself on the operating table. I mean, I have to ask this because anyone who's going into any sort of serious surgery, I mean, I'm sure the thought of not getting through this comes up. I mean, you're talking about how not arriving to this as a punk, but I would imagine that it's a vulnerable situation being on that table and not really knowing what to expect. So, can we get some insight into your mind and kind of what was going on during that time?
Yeah, well, I was just like really stoked we had a solution for what was going on because the headaches were getting so bad, man. I couldn't see straight. Like I literally went blind on the tube. And so when they told me we're having brain surgery tomorrow, I was kind of relieved to know, like, well, at least we found what it is. But brain surgery doesn't sound good, man. So I went into the surgery. It went sideways on me real quick. I didn't wake up until 4 weeks later, right? I was in a coma for 4 weeks. At which time they told my parents, like, look, he may not make this. And if so, what state am I going to be in after 4 weeks in a coma, brain hemorrhage? They weren't sure what the prognosis was. They told my parents he may not make this. They'd use ice blankets above and below me to keep my core temperature down when I was in a coma. It's led to violent shivering. My parents said it was horrible to watch. I used a feeding tube down my nose to feed me when I was in the coma. Right, I would rip this out in the coma. So they put mitts around my hands, right? So I couldn't do this, right? But I would work on these mitts for days. And I'd finally get it free and I'd rip it out. But every time I rip it out, I'd put it down and x-raying to make sure that I was not in my lungs and not my stomach. Or in my stomach, not my lungs. So, like, I don't have many memories from the coma, but I have this one dream that I recall very vividly, which is kind of weird.
I was going to ask you about a dream or something or some mantra. Yeah, please tell.
Yeah, so I'm like in this submarine, right? I'm in a submarine, which is kind of wild. And there's a massive aquarium on the submarine. And I'm walking around thinking, like, well, why the hell would you spend all this time putting an aquarium on the submarine when we're already underwater, brother? This doesn't make any sense. That's the one dream that I have that's very clear in my mind. But I ended up waking up with my mom, dad, brother around the bed. And I'm trying to talk, but I can't talk because I had a tracheotomy removed. It took me weeks to start talking again, right? So I pointed at my brother, you. Give me a pen and paper, right? I wrote down on the paper, get me out of here. And I showed it to him. And I pointed this to him like, yeah, make it happen, bud. Not knowing like, dude, you're going to be in the hospital for months after this. Like, you're not going anywhere, man. I just saw this and like, look, I'm not a UK citizen. I'm a Canadian or an Austrian living abroad in the UK. And this looks expensive. Get the hell out of Dodge if we can. So I did that. Thankfully, he did not take my advice. He did not heed my advice. But
yeah,
it was off to the races, man. So I couldn't talk, right? And the way the nurse got me talking again was she goes, first of all, the nurse told my doctors, like, look, he may not be able to speak again. His vocal cords are pretty shot from the tracheotomy and the breathing tube, so it's pretty bad. The way she got me talking again, she was a Kiwi nurse, right? A mean old gal. She took me to the park in the wheelchair and she goes, I'll get him talking again. And she goes, damn, those kids across the park playing football, soccer, they don't think you're good enough to talk to him. They don't think you're good enough to talk. And I kind of found out pretty quickly that's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
And I will bend the world to prove you wrong. And I found a few choice words to yell across the park at these kids. I'm sure they didn't make much sense, but it was just like, how dare you speak to me this way? And I'm good enough to talk. Who do you think you're talking to? But I kind of found out that's a trigger for me. That's a motivating factor for me. Tell me I can't do something, and I'll bend the world to prove you wrong, man. So I got my voice back, which is ironic now because I'm a speaker full time now, which is a blessing. But yeah, it was all 0 to 60 in like an instant, right?
Yeah. Man, I've been looking for a really creative way, Dan, and I know that you're a fan of Michael Jordan and his work. I'm still coming up with a way to kind of pose this in a overall message, but I tend to find that the champions of the world, the heroes of the world, live by some of those triggering statements, right? They almost have it in their brain where it's like, let me prove you wrong. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering for you, are there people that you've sort of molded that champion mindset around, or is that something that maybe you've just developed growing up where it's like, don't tell me who I am or what I can do?
Mixture of both. I've always been a bit undersized as a kid. Sports was like, I was quite a sporty guy, played all the sports. So people be like, oh, I don't want to pick this guy. He's a bit smaller. Like, hey, man, I got you on the game. Had full court press
Yeah,
on you, but like,
yeah, I'm coming at you.
I would die on that hill. I used to play a lot of soccer growing up, and I would get tackled a lot because I don't know, I had big poofy hair and I looked like a pretty soft kid. But I always jump up and like jump right up against him, and be like, hey, man, nice tackle. I'll catch you on the side, brother. Like, I love that strife that telling me I'm not good enough, man, because like I'm coming at you full steam. Now that's, as we saw from the Michael Jordan documentary, that's not a healthy place that motivation come from for a sustained period of time.
Yeah,
I noticed in that documentary how bitter and jaded Michael Jordan was still at life and people that told him wrong. And I'm
same.
like, I don't want to be that guy when I'm an older man. Like, I want to be a happy-go-lucky dude. I want to shed the bitterness and the angerness. So no, trying to transition my motivation to now service, lending a hand. Your success is my success. My success is your success.
Hmm.
But there's that dog in me for sure that's still, I'm not going to have to be here, man. Cool. Watch me. Like, that's in me for sure. And I don't think you can ever get rid of that. I'm telling you, don't judge your motivation. Ride the wave that comes, brother. And then try to pivot as you go, but ride that wave when it comes, man. Don't wait for the proper wave. You may not get another wave for a while. Ride the
Hmm.
wave that comes, man. Make it happen.
So, I mean, on the topic, Dan, of riding the wave, kind of going to that moment where there is that almost champion mindset and that level of petty, which I would agree. I think looking back on the Michael Jordan doc, he still has that. And I'm guessing it creates a lot of bitterness. And I would agree. You have to find a nice balance between that. So going back to that moment, I would love to tap into what it was like rehabbing, getting back to where you are now. I mean, where did you pull from? What sort of grit did you develop? I mean, what are some of the things that helped you during that time?
Well, dude, like, first of all, I was out of this coma. I couldn't walk. My left leg had atrophied. I was frozen at an angle. I had to wear a splint to start walking again. I was in a wheelchair for months, right? It took me 45 minutes to get in the wheelchair, then 40, then 35, then 30, then 25, then 20. Everything was difficult, arduous, grindy. Like, the rehab process was grueling, man. But I worked at it. And like every day I'm making little gains, little progress here. I want to share the story with you about my splint, if I may. Yes, is that
Yeah,
cool?
please. Yeah, absolutely.
So the first night I wore the splint through the night, no issue, no stress. This will be easy, I thought. This will be easy. Huh. Yes, it wasn't easy, I'll tell you that much, bud. The second night, after 20 minutes, it was painful. After 30 minutes, it was dreadful. After 40 minutes, it was unbearable. I buzzed the nurse to take off the splint. I can't take the pain anymore. But I told him, tomorrow, we're doing this for an hour, man. I'm a walker. I can handle the pain. So the third night, they wrap up my leg. They give me the clicker, the nurse call button. They go patrol the Wilson ward. Now, the Wilson ward was an L shape, right? Short on this side. long on this side, okay? Short on this side, long on this side. And they leave me in a hospital room that smells like only a hospital room can smell. Sanitized, sterilized. But you're wondering
Gross.
what sort of atrocities have been covered up under the guise of this pine sol lemon zest that you got going here. It smells like that. It's in your nostrils, right?
Yeah.
Now, after 10 minutes, the leg's painful. After 20 minutes, the leg's dreadful. After 30 minutes, the leg's unbearable. I start passing the clicker back and forth, trying to distract myself from the pain. Now, Diaz, I got double vision from the brain injury, which is why I can't look at the bloody camera. I'm sorry about that, and the listeners as well. It means I see two of this clicker going back and forth, but I can't see much of this, right? I can't see shit. As the pain ratchets up my throat, I get more enthusiastic, till eventually, inevitably, I drop the clicker and it lands on the hard linoleum floor. Shit. Look over the edge of the bed, I see the clicker there lying on the floor looking back at me. If I can get to that clicker, I can end this pain, man. Only problem was a drop from that height might break my arm. In fact, I figured about a 50-50 chance, a coin flip of me break my arm. Not the best odds, I changed tack. I'm pawing to the splint trying to undo it, but it's done at the ankle, not at the hip. I'm not that flexible. I can't reach that far down. The word of the Wilson was an L shape, right? Short on this side, long on this side. Short on this side, long on this side. At the far end of the ward, they can't hear me out for help. I decided I'm flipping the coin, man. Because right now in this world, that clicker is the most important thing in my vibe. I cannot handle this pain for one more second. I drop down out of the bed. It's a yard sale. Blankets, wires, cables, it's all a go. I smash down and crash down in a heap. It's a yard sale. The arm holds, and I hammer the clicker, expecting the nurses to come bursting into the room to come to my rescue. They kind of stroll in 5 minutes later. What are you doing on the floor, love? That's my attempt at a very good accent.
Hey, that's way better than what I can come up with.
I said, let's not worry about this. Going to splint off my leg. Please, I'll tell you about this. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to the matter. The reason why I'm telling you this story, man, is I learned 3 lessons from this experience. The first is let's not pass the clicker back and forth. Slow burn here. That takes a little while for me to pick up. The second was let's do the splint up at the hip, not the ankle. That way I can undo this should this happen going forwards. And the third and probably most profound was let's always be solutions oriented from this one forwards. Dealing with problems in your life. How can I fix it? Not how you got yourself in this pickle. How do you fix it? And then go back and figure out how to avoid the pickle in the future. But solutions orientation, man, huge vibe. And that's a big part of my vibe now. So that like is an indication of how painful the splint was, man. I was flipping the coin to see if I was going to break my arm to get the splint off my leg. Now, I want to share another story about walking in Tune Broadway, if I may, with your group. Is that cool?
Please. Yes, Dan. This is you, man. I'm loving this.
All right, man. Well, I'll give you this. I just told the story at the Impact 11 stage in Scottsdale, man. It served me well, so hopefully it picks up with your audience as well, man.
Please.
So, have you been to London, England, my man?
I have not. It's definitely on the bucket list.
Right on, brother. Well, I'll give you let me paint the scene for you. Okay, Tooting Broadway is an area in South London, right?
Okay.
An area they call up and coming. Think loud sirens, drugs, gangs. It's dirty. It's hectic, and boy, is it busy. I'm walking with a cane. I'm walking with an eye patch. After 4 months in a wheelchair, I am literally Bambi on ice, my man. Bambi on ice. I turn the corner to walk on Tooting Broadway High Street for the first time. Immediately get slammed into by someone. I stagger back a few feet. Someone scurries past me on the right-hand side. I thought I was done with the rats at this stage. Someone had been stabbed on the sidewalk over here. I'm thinking, this is a pretty wild place to learn how to walk.
Yeah.
After a few days or so, I'm thinking, this is the worst place to learn how to walk in the world. Can't they see I'm trying to walk here? Can't they see I'm trying here?
Yeah.
And then one day my perspective shifted. Maybe this isn't the worst place to learn how to walk in the world. No, maybe this is the best. If I can walk here, I can walk anywhere. Now, Tune Broadway didn't change, right?
Yeah.
It went from the worst to the best in my mind, and my mood reflected that. What are you looking at in your life you're convinced is the worst? Convinced is the absolute worst. Hey, maybe it is the actual worst, man. Or maybe you can find a way to turn down the suck a little bit. Shift that perspective a little bit. The reason why I'm telling you that story about learning to walk in Tune Broadway is when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. And you don't need a brain hemorrhage to understand that. So there's a couple of stories for you to get us off to the races here, my man. But it was a grind to get back to walking, man. And that was the first rung of this ladder, if that makes sense.
Dan, I love that you're taking these small moments of triumphs and creating opportunities where these become your mantras, these become your messages. Dan, I'm wondering for you, because in a lot of ways, the 50-50 coin flip, I think the first thing that I think about, and we've had tons of conversations on this podcast with guests, and I've also had some solo conversations with listeners too, just being able to have some of these solo episodes, is that like idea of immediate gratification, like sometimes just acting without even thinking about it. So I think that's the first piece that spoke to me. And even just with you learning how to walk and changing your perspective, I tend to find that it's extremely hard for people to change their perspective in a minute's notice and not be able to take action on that. So, I mean, Dan, for you, like you're getting these little pieces from the recovery from your injury. I mean, where is that coming from? Is this merely just because you were on your death table, literally, or is this something that you acquire over time?
That's a good question, my man. And to be honest, like the dots didn't all line up when I'm looking forward at this, right? It only lines when I'm looking backwards.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not like, I've got this. But that being said, learning to walk in Broadway, I was thinking, I spent a long time on my backside, right? I couldn't walk at the stage, right? So I'm in a wheelchair. A lot of time in the bed, and I realized, like, you know what? Why is this the worst? Well, it's the worst because people bump into me, they crash past me, it's dirty, it's busy, it's hectic. And I thought, well, if you were to build the perfect environment to learn to walk, wouldn't you want to learn in the toughest environment? Because that would
Yep.
actually make it the best. So I like deconstructed that and like, hey man, maybe it's not the worst, maybe this is the best. If I can walk here, I can walk anywhere. But
hmm
that took a while to get to that stage of like, is this the worst or is it the best? But there's a through line using my talks quite a lot, and I'll share it with the group now. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. It's
hmm
not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. Now, that's not mine. That's Epictetus.
hmm
He's kind of OG philosopher, Stoic philosopher.
Yep. Yep.
But like that line of like it's not what it is, but what you think about it that matters is so key, man. And like when early days from the hospital, I realized the brain hemorrhage is not good. Right, this is not a good vibe. I can't walk, talk, or smile. I'm in the hospital. I'm in London, England. But this has gone sideways on you. Ever you can see a little account, right?
hmm
But you're not dead. And so you're lying on your back now with the world gone sideways on you. Now, how do you respond to it now? How do you respond to it now? Because you're not dead. You survived. And now you've got to build yourself back up. You got to become the hero in your own story. I remember leaving. My friend Claire came to visit me in London when I was in a wheelchair at the time. And she went to Scotland. And then she came back down and I was walking on the Zimmer frame. She goes, damn, this is incredible. You were in a wheelchair last time. I was like, I know you're walking, but like I wanted to show her that I'm trying here, that I'm worthy of the praise you're giving me. Oh, Dan,
Yeah.
you're so resilient, you're so feisty, you're so gritty. Like I'm so glad to see you progressing. Like I wanted to earn that praise. I wanted to show that I'm trying here. I've always prided myself growing up, man, like as never showing that I try hard, but I always secretly try hard. I wanted to
hmm
be like just naturally gifted and cool and it's cool about this stuff, but like I always tried hard secretly. Now it's like, I don't care if you see me caning this on the sideline. Like, you'll know that I'm trying. You'll never hear me fail for a lack of effort. Maybe because I'm not good enough. Maybe. But not because I didn't try hard enough, my man.
Yeah.
And I adopt this mindset like this when this happened because I realize this is not good, but it's what you think about it that matters now. You got to kind of adapt this new reality and get after it, man, because it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. And that's facts, man. That's facts.
Yeah, Dan, I would love to be vulnerable with you if that's cool.
Please.
It's so awesome to feel affirmed by this because in most cases I have certain skill sets, and I think what has gotten me in trouble in the past and what I have been actively working on is that piece that you're talking about right there, because a lot of things come to me uh, fairly easy. And I think what I've gotten in trouble with in the past is merely relying on my talent and not actually doing the work, because there was almost this like underlying feeling of, well, if I can rely on my talents and I end up going out and executing on like a B, at times maybe A, but maybe a C level, like then I can be okay because I didn't give it my all. And I think that there's almost like a level of imposter syndrome and a level of being afraid to fail that I've been working through for the past couple years, when I started to become aware that like, oh, this is why I'm not trying as hard as I can, because I don't want to fail if I do. And so Dan, for someone like myself who is recovering from that, if you're gleaning from your experiences, how can I get better in that area?
That's a great point, a great question. And to be honest, it's something that I worked at very difficultly, like diligently. With the brain hemorrhage, man, like with the brain injury, like I really learned how to walk, talk, and smile again. There's a lot of failure in my vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't talk for the first 2 or 3 weeks, couldn't walk for the first 4 or 5 months. Like I was failing again and again and again and again and again. But only by risking failure did I realize that I would make real progress and real steps. If I didn't try and didn't fail, I wasn't even trying, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where like I knew that in myself I was trying or wasn't trying. I could maybe bullshit you. Yeah, I tried to do this today, like, but I didn't try.
Yeah.
Like that guilt would weigh on me heavy, man. And I would know, like, hey, man, you could have tried a lot harder yesterday. You didn't try. You made it look like you tried, but you didn't really try.
Mm-hmm.
But like, only you will know that.
Yeah.
But like, I'm telling you right now, failure is success, right? Every failure is a step closer to success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eliminating that failure from the future failures, right? I'll fail often. I'll fail many things, but rarely do I fail at the same thing twice, right? It happens. I'll be honest. It happens, oh man. It happens. But like, if you're not even failing, you're not even trying, man. So like, failure is something you got to embrace, not as a failure, but like a step closer to success. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, so if we're kind of taking a lot of these mindsets for a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, Dan, up to this point, my burning question, I'm sure a lot of our listeners' burning question is you're taking these small little feats of progress and you're stacking them, right? So I
Yeah,
think what I
yeah.
would love to learn, Dan, is like you have these moments. What were those moments as you started to gain your sight, as you started to walk again, as you started to get into this? I don't know if I would call it a mindset. Maybe I would call it creating an environment where it's like I need to go out and tell my story. I mean, this is part of the hero's journey. It's coming back and delivering my story and providing value. So like, what were those moments, Dan, for you?
I've decided I'm going to come back and make a go of things. Sorry, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I get the question right.
yeah.
Well, like I talk about this as one of my hacks in my presentation. It's like hero. It's like this mask of Deadpool. What does Deadpool mean, Dan? Well, Deadpool means for me be the hero in your own story.
Hmm.
Imagine your story starts right now. You're waking up from the coma. You can't walk, talk, or smile. Been told, hey, Dan, this happened to you. Here's the dossier. Here's the file. It was like 2 of these, but let me tell you, man. I just got that ship back from London. It was a pain in the ass to get that ship back out. It's a lot of information.
Hmm.
But 2 of these thick, like saying, hey, man, this happened to you. This happened to you. What do you do now? And you get a choice right then and there. Like, this is not good. This is not fair. It's not fair. Okay. Let me start off by saying it's not fair, right? It's
Hmm.
not fair this happened to me, right? It's not fair this happened. But guess what? No one's coming to save you, man. Only by you taking the steps to better yourself can you resolve this and take the next step forward. By wishing something didn't happen, you're not taking steps to resolve it or like
Hmm.
rectify your position. You're just prolonging the inevitable. You're just saying, okay, in 6 months' time when I'm done whinging about this, I guess I can take steps to resolve it. Right now, I'm just going to whinge about it. And like, hey, man, that's fine. You do you. But
Hmm.
I'm streamlining the time it takes to accept something bad in my life. The first setback took a month. Hinting there's a second setback. There's a second setback I'll tell you about, your listeners, in just a second. That took about a week. I lost my job this past summer. It took about an afternoon, okay? I wasn't over it in an afternoon, but I accepted it in an afternoon.
Yeah.
I decided that I'm going to become a speaker tomorrow, which means I need a computer today. But the shorten the time to acceptance is key. If I may tell you the story of the second setback, would that be okay?
Yeah, please.
So this will happen, I'm a year after the setback happened. I made myself back to work 2 half days a week, right?
Hmm.
At Hootsuite, shout out Hootsuite, tech company in
Hey.
Vancouver, but also in London and Madrid and Paris. Like they got offices everywhere, man. They're a force of nature. The doctors say, my mom says the doctors saved my life, but who's not going to get my life back, right? So I'm doing 2 half days a week, man. Not doing much. I'm looking at emails, kind of in the office, being there, getting attaboys by people, wearing a cane, walking on an eye patch. Like I'm definitely been crunked a little bit here. I'm definitely noticeable, pretty crunked, right?
Yeah.
And then one day I didn't show up at the tube for work because I meet my mom at the tube in the mornings for work. And then I go off to work and she go off to do her walk, whatever. That's kind of odd. She goes back to my flat and finds me unconscious on the floor. And she calls 999 because it's not 911 there. That's a good fact for your listeners to know.
Thank you for that.
And I get rushed to the hospital, have emergency brain surgery. And I wake up in the hospital bed hearing the beeping noise, the heart monitor going off behind me. The beep. What happened? What happened? What happened? Well, Dan, you had a second setback, which
Oof.
required emergency brain surgery. And I go, what do you mean? Well, we got the blockage. There's a shunt in my brain from the first surgery, and a block leading to hydrocephalus or water on the brain. And this is not good. And this required emergency brain surgery. And I woke up in the hospital bed being told, hey man, you're fine now, but you had emergency brain surgery again. But I've been working for a year to get back to work, to get back to some sort of normal life.
Mhm.
I describe my life as like a W-shaped setback, right? The first setback's down here.
Yep.
Now I crowd back to work, about halfway back up. The second setback happens not here, where the first one was much lower. I call this the depths of the human experience, man. Where all your hopes and dreams are snickered at and laughed at. They thought you had a chance there, bud. Ha! You're going nowhere, brother. We got you back down here. I was devastated after this, man. I can't tell you how hard this was to negotiate and to like rationalize in my head. I was down for a week. I was pity spiral, woes me, this isn't fair. But I kind of realized, man, it's not fair that it happened to you. But guess what? No one's coming to save you. You got to take the steps to get yourself back out here. And this took a good week for me to be down the pity spiral, man. So I'm not saying I'm like overnight, I'm like fine with this.
Yeah.
A week to make the mindset for this. But like this was the difficult time. The first setback was a joke compared to this. Because I had all the support. I was in the hospital for the rehab center. The second setback, I had done rehab. So I had to fight tooth and nail to be back in like vocational rehab from a distance, from afar. But like that pivot, man, was so difficult. And then work's apprehensive coming back in the office. Like, did we cause this? Like, no, you didn't cause this. Apparently it happens in less than 10% of cases, my man. So like, sick. Let's so glad this happened again, man. That's awesome. But like, it's how you think about it that matters, man. And that mindset shift took a week to get my head around this, right? But no one's coming to save you. And I had to accept it and then move forward from it, man. So it's a rant and a half for you, but there you go, bud.
I mean, being on the other side of that W, I love the visual there because it paints that roadmap of truly how influential this story has been in your life. So, I mean, it took you a week, which, Dan, I got to be honest, it humanizes you because right now you're fucking Superman on this podcast to me. But it humanizes you because you're taking a week to allow this to set in, right? You're taking a week to accept this. And I think one of the things that keeps coming up for me is you have to be the hero in your own hero story. No one is going to come save you except yourself. And I think for our listeners out there, if you have any quotables from any of this conversation, I think that right there is it. Now, Dan, obviously, I told you when we first started, season 9 for a lot of our theme, if you will, is taking action, right? Noticing that the pivot is happening, accepting the pivot, and then taking action. So going on the other side of this W where you start to rise, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, man. So the W is real. And I'm literally like, first 2 W's were here. I'm now up to here. Like I'm speaking, I'm diving into this pain, this suffering, this heartache, and share the story on stage now because like I can give you these lessons I learned, man, because these lessons aren't light, trite, control the controllables, like all this like whimsical one-liners. It's like, hey man, I was in the dumps twice, and this helped me navigate this in a way that's allowed me to succeed and thrive. And like the hardest thing you've ever been through is the hardest thing you've ever been through, right? For some people that could be anything. Odds are you're not going to have a brain hemorrhage, but you will have a job loss, a breakup, a diagnosis for you, a loved one. Let me show you the compass, right? I'm trying to show you the compass here. It always points towards true north, man. So like this mindset I've got now is so pure, like I feel invincible, bud. And that's not me tempting fate. But just like, what are you going to come at me with like that I can't overcome and deal with? Like,
yeah.
Oh, you think that's a big thing I can't overcome? Like, look at some perspective, man. Look what I've overcome and dealt with. Like, I talk about my presentation. I talk about my brain injury. Like, and I kind of joke at it and laugh at it and snicker at it. Because you can look this thing dead in the eye and be like, hey, man, you tried to take me twice. And I'm still here laughing. So, 2 for the road. And that's like I want to just let this thing know that, hey, man, I got no respect for you. I got no respect for you. And I'm going to talk to you in clowning terms in front of everyone because I want everyone to know that you ain't shit, bud. And like, I've overcome this. I've navigated this. And you can too. I did these brain scans a little while ago. I'll go off piece here, but let me go with this one story if you don't mind. I did these brain scans last year at this brain clinic in Vancouver, BC, called Health Tech Connects. I did a keynote film last month. And my results came back as average for my age range, okay? Average for my age range, which, for guys who had 2 brain surgeries, that's pretty good.
That's great.
But I read these results as shockingly average, right? I've done so well. I was expecting there to be some big ups, some big downs. I'm not neurotypical. I'm not normal, but I've done well. But shockingly average as the results came back, and I was miffed by so I was expecting to be a bit gifted, a bit above and beyond and superior in some capacity. I've got a bit of an ego if you can't tell.
I love
it.
Never change, bro.
But then I thought about this more, and I was like, average is good because that means I'm no better than you, man. I've only been successful because I've dove into this mindset, toes over the nose of my board, and I'm riding this wave down. And that means that you can do it too, man. I'm no smarter or better than you, but you can do this as well because I've just leaned in this mindset full stop, full steam, full clip. And that means that you can do it too, brother. Which means that my talks now are not me talking about how great I am, but they're talking about what you can do too, the human potential. You're stronger than you think, man. And that's what the message I want to get across now is you can do this too. Why not? I'm no better than you, bud. So that's a rant and a half for you there, bud. But there you go.
I mean, Dan, you got me ready to run into a firing building right now. So you got me locked. I mean, fast forward to now. I heard you talk a bit about what you're doing now that is keeping that fire, and I can't help, Dan, but ask, because this is also a podcast about the habits and rituals of high level individuals and their harrowing stories. Are there things today that you absolutely ride by, whether it's how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, like any of those things? I knew that was going to perk your interest. Let's go.
This group's going to know what this is, right? The whoop strap. Y'all know what this means?
Yep.
So I ride or die by this every night. Rest is number 1, 2, and 3 for my vibe. I got a morning routine that's very intentional, that sets me up for success. I wake up in the morning and I make my bed. First thing, full stop, nicely. There's a great video.
Same here.
You want to change the world? Make your bed. I make the bed every day now, and that's a religious non-negotiable for me. I will go for a workout generally, and I haven't done it for the past couple of days because the past couple of weeks I was a bit sick, and I came back from Scottsdale, as you know. And I'm still getting myself back on the time zone and back in the zone and the vibe. The travel took it out of me. But I'll work out and get a sweat on. Mood follows action, okay? Ritual, big guy to follow along with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll have a shower. Gotta get cleaned up, gotta get fresh, right? I'll end the shower cold. Nothing heroic here. I'm in Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Yeah,
it's in Canada, but it's not that cold. It's not that cold. It's cold in Scottsdale because that Scottsdale water there is some pretty warm stuff. I'll be honest with you, bud. Yeah. But it's cold. It's fresh. It puts some hair in your chest and wakes you up. A little giddy up and go. A little kick in the backside. Woo! And then I get out of the shower and I'll meditate for 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, every day, 20 to 25 minutes. I'll breathe, focus on my breath, get my ducks in a row. I'll track this on the whoop strap, my cold shower, and my meditation. I'll get on and have a breakfast, full day. Every day is the same, routine-based, every day. I'm reducing the amount of thinking I do in the morning. It's routine-based. I don't think about it. It's automatic. It's non-negotiable. It's automatic, okay? And I'm reducing the bandwidth I use in the morning to get this rolling with this, man. I'll do athletic greens as well, a big thing of water. And I'm off to start the races, man. So that's my morning routine. And that's one that I do every day, non-negotiable, man. Now in Scottsdale, I won't do the workout in the morning. I woke up early, still meditated. The session started at 7:30, so I was up at 6 to shower, to meditate, to be ready for a 7:30 start. Which is a bit early, but hey man, if I don't do that, I'm not successful. I'll also sneak off to meditate during the day when I'm a bit tired. For instance, at lunch today, I had a meditation for the session because I want to be fresh for you, my man.
Appreciate it.
If I don't do that, I'm not as good as I could be. And a brain injury, the battery's about 75%. So everything I do detracts from that battery and drains the battery down. Below 50, I'm less pleasant. Below 70, below 40, I'm a bit of a prick. I gotta shout, I gotta meditate or nap to charge myself back up the battery. But the battery is a key part of my vibe now, and I gotta respect the battery. And this whoop strap helps me respect the battery, man.
Yeah.
So not affiliated with Whoop in any way, but like find something that works for you, man, to track your vibe, and like just honor that, man, and like and believe it. Like I swear by this, probably more than I should. Like how am I feeling? Let me check the Whoop strap. But like it helps me understand like my battery levels for that day, right? Which is helpful.
Yeah. Dan, you're saying all
I
the
got like Go ahead, sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're saying all the right things. I mean, a lot of our audience is well versed in the health tech, and I'm really big on data because to me the data doesn't lie, especially when you utilize it in the right way. So yeah, I had some commentary on that. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted. I'm locked in right now.
No, man. Like I got habits and hacks for days. Like they're lighthearted ways to gamify life and have fun. Right. I've
Yeah,
got one that's momentum that I'll share with the group now, if you don't mind.
please.
It's just like momentum. So there's two types of momentum. There's swallow the hairy frog momentum, which what does that mean, Dan? That's a ridiculous statement. Swallow the hairy frog is doing the most difficult thing in the morning, first thing in the morning, right? You have to swallow a frog, you have to swallow it first thing in the morning. So I call that swallow the hairy frog. I've also got one called building blocks, where like if I'm in from the office or like this morning before I started work, I threw laundry in. As the day progresses, I keep that laundry going, I turn it over, and I keep the wheel spinning. Your momentum is so key for this. When you lose momentum, it's so difficult to start out from a dead stop, but to keep it moving a little bit by little bit, it's
Hmm.
easy. It's not that difficult to do, but a dead stop's really difficult to do, man. I cut you off. Please go ahead, my man.
No, I think so. I follow those same two principles, Dan, and I'm so glad that we're talking about this. Is obviously for those who are serial procrastinators, and I know a lot of our audience is utilizing these two. I think is so important. Eating the frog first thing in the morning, I think, is key. I typically, Dan, I got to be honest with you. If something's really tough, I'm a little bit more on the building blocks, small little wins, keeping myself in momentum so that I can actually deliver on some of the things that I need to do, which is always why I keep myself going. So out of those two, I would say I'm probably the latter. If someone is looking to get better with either one, Dan, how do they do that?
So building blocks for sure, and small winnable wins. Like just shrink down the target to something you can hit for sure, and hit that and expand and expand and expand. Build yourself up an undeniable stack of evidence that says you do what you say you're going to do. You can foster resilience. You can foster this belief that you can do something by outworking yourself down and doing what you say you're going to do. I get in the pool twice a week, 3 times a week actually. Twice a week, 3 times a week. Every time I get in the pool, I set an intention. I want to do this many laps. I've got a lap counter which counts the laps on the wrist. Does what it says in the tin. And whenever I say I've got to do that number, okay, so I'll say like 50 or 60. I'll think 60 for a second. Like, I guess I'm going to do 60. And I got to do 60 lengths. Save one exception. If my lane is infested with backstrokers, I'll bounce out of that lane quicker than you can believe it, man. But save that. I am in this ride or die. But the way you build this out is by picking a small winnable target and building it out and scaling. Build and scale, build and scale.
Mm-hmm.
Outwork yourself out, man. Like start small and build out slowly, man. That's how you can do this. That's how you can be this.
I love that. I mean, Dan, you're sitting in this life right now as we sort of come to a stop, a farewell, because I don't want to stop talking to you, Dan. You and I are going to have to connect some more and collaborate some more. But as we give our audience a visual of this W, if you will, you're obviously on the other side, continuing to thrive. So I told you that I don't pre-script questions, but I like to ask our guests two questions as we come to a close with our conversation. So before we get there, Dan, I am so appreciative of you spending time with us, man. Thank you. So I probably already know the answer to this, but I'm always accustomed to being very curious about what our guests are going to answer here. So obviously, this is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So the big question for you, Dan, is have you made it? And if not, what does making it look like for you in your season of life right now?
Brother, I'm just getting started.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
And I've not made it yet. That being said, I'm taking those wins as I go, right? I walked into my old rehab center, my old ICU section, intensive care unit, walked in with a cane and an eye patch, and my old ICU nurse burst into tears. She didn't think I'd make it back this far. Speaking now, I'm just getting started on the speaking circuit. I've spoken, it was at Impact 11 in Scottsdale. I'm fired up on life. I'm fired up on speaking. I'm fired up on what my future looks like, man. I'll know I made it when will I make it? I don't know, man. I want to make a big impact. I want to impact so many people in this world. I want to speak on big stages. I want to have an impact with vibe and perspective and mindset. Because I did this, and those brain test results told me I'm no better than you, so why can't you do this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only here from mindset and work ethic. You can do this too. I'm just getting started, brother, and I look forward to what the future holds for me, man.
Yeah, man. I know I'll speak for our audience here and I'll speak for myself, obviously, but I'm excited to get a front row. So Dan, last question for you, and we will let you get to the rest of your day, man. Once again, big shout out to you for jumping on the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. Is where can people support you? Where can we continue to get that front row seat to this ongoing rise, man? Because I gotta thank my brother-in-law, man. Sean, shout out to you when you listen to this. Missing you as well. I'm excited to see what it looks like, Dan. So where can people find you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is McQueenDan.com. That's MacQueen Dan.com. Most of McQueen Dan across the socials. I locked up that domain, so I'm across that, like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. But McQueenDan.com, you can see my demo reel and see what I can do. I speak now, and I'm trying to change the way you look at the world, right? Not change the world, but change the way you look at the world. And hoping that perspective shift that I can bring and invoke in you will help you understand what can be done, what's possible. So I'm just getting started, and I'm stoked to see what the future holds for me, man.
Oh. Dan, I thank you, man. I'm a better person having had this conversation with you. This is a big reason why I love doing this podcast, because it's been my gift to myself over the past 4 years of constantly overthinking this project. And then finally, about 4 years ago on my birthday, Dan, I was like, you know what? I'm done talking shit. I'm just going to launch one today and just see what happens. And I think one of the most fruitful things for me, and I know our listeners echo this, is getting to have really intentional, amazing conversations with guests that in the future become friends, man. So, Dan, I so appreciate you taking the time with us, brother.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. And one last thing for your listeners. Done is better than perfect.
Yes.
As a speaker now, I'm a bit apprehensive. Like, am I going to release this? Am I going to put this out? Dude, done is better than perfect. I submit the application. I submit the profile. I submit the demo video. Like, it's not perfect, but it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Done is better than perfect. Get after it. Talk to you later, man. Ciao.
Ciao.